started. Thank you all for coming out here tonight to hear Putnam County historian Larry Tippin talk about the history of Cloverdale. And thank you also for bearing with me. We had a kind of a quick turnaround with the vets this afternoon, so I hope you all enjoyed browsing the museum as you waited for me to put up chairs. So without further ado, Bruce Larry Tippin.
So it's great to see a large number of people here on this topic. We appreciate y'all coming out on a day like this, especially. It's rough weather here. It'll supposed to warm up a little bit next week, but it's pretty cold out there. So we've been doing a series of talks on the communities we call tie town Spanish villages, and we talked about many, but today we're going to talk about Cloverdale. So we can't talk about everything about Cloverdale. This young lady here showed me a couple of books that we have and read about Cloverdale that were excellent resources in my research. I can't remember what they're called. Cloverdale 100, I believe, was one of them. Cloverdale Then and Now, I believe, was the other one. Yeah. Cloverdale Then and Now, Cloverdale 100 Years. This was from 1839 to 1939. And I'm guessing they got it up to date, 1839, 1979. A very good book, have a lot of good information in this. You want to find out more. Some of you probably have already seen those books. One of the unique things about Cloverdale, I'll start with the township. Most townships are one congressional or legal township, the range and so forth. So, well, Cloverdale is unique, the township that is part of four legal township or congressional townships. For many of you know that. So you can see the maps. So this is part of one, and another part, and then it intersects. Basically right on the north edge of Cloverdale. It's where those four parts intersect. This is kind of unique. This is another look from the 1879 atlas that we have available to reproduce. See Cloverdale. Now, Orton's kind of unique too, because it's quite a bit over here. And more in the smaller township and Jefferson, and now they have Mill Creek in Jefferson. You can see prominent community in Oakland. You ever heard of Oakland? I think some of you know about that. And other places over here. Okay, so Cloverdale was settled early. 1823 was when we see the first settlers, we believe, in Cloverdale. The first ones we think are William Hamilton and James Robinson, who built cabins off the ride from Kentucky in early 1823. 1823 was pretty early. The county was made by legislature December 31st, 1821. So these are some of the early settlers. We had James Robinson, William Hamilton, other settlers, Thomas Jane, Ambrose Bandy, John Macy, and Andrew Kilgore. May have heard some of those names, maybe not. This group of men, along with pioneer James Robinson, were involved in the first murder in the county, immediately followed by the first suicide over some flax. I'll try to get this story best I can. So Robinson's wife was employed by Mrs. Bandy, wife of Ambrose Bandy, expensive flax. So they didn't have any money to exchange. Really, if you did some work like this, you kept a portion of it for your efforts or your time. And apparently, Mr. Robinson, when she waited, thought she had been shorted by 1 dozen. We don't know what 1 dozen means, but 1 dozen something. But anyway, apparently she was shorted. And she shared this information with her neighbors, who gossiped about it when it came back, the Bandys. And Ambrose Bandy was irate and threatened to sue Robinson and his wife for slander. Then in turn, Robinson was enraged. He was described as sulky, quick-tempered, hard to get along with guy. Came unfriendly with his neighbors. He would talk about the flocks, especially angered at Bandy, James, Mace, and Kilgore. So one day in April of 1824, the Bandys visited the James, staying overnight, and that made Robinson particularly angry. College James was living with his wife and 3 children near what was known as Granny Nelson's Spring. Does anybody know where that's at? Have I heard of that? I've seen that in these books. I don't know exactly where that's at. So Robinson rose one morning, formed his family. They would be on their own from now forward. Left his camp with his gun in hand. He's going to settle the score for this matter for the Splocks. First went to Bandy's, apparently, making Ambrose Bandy his victim. Bandy was able to observe Robinson coming and hid behind a tree. Robinson passed by, went to Macy's. And then Robinson approached. He saw Macy with his son James. So there in the cabins, and he really couldn't bring it out to harm this man with his young boy there. The next were Tom Sage was constructing a new cabin on land. It's what's now part of the Cloverdale Cemetery, apparently. His James was alone in the forest, using a flooring for his cabin. They called it punch outs. What they did was they just took a log and cut it diagonally, and then turned it upside down on that floor. That's what they did back then. And then it was when Thomas James was hunched over his work, Robinson stuck tree to tree, books that ended his style. And then we got about 50 yards. He fired at James. Entered James, left arm, passed through the torso of side to side, lodging against the skin. Looking toward the direction where he heard a gunshot, observed Robinson, lowering his gun. And James at first was not mortally wounded. Was able to run back to his temporary dwelling while he was making his cabin, which was about 200 yards away. The nearest doctor was a Dr. Lowe from Greencastle, and he examined James, reviewed the bulb, made an effort to heal the wounds, and James labored for 28 days and died of blood poisoning, which many felt could have been avoided, had a more experienced doctor and looking after us to the young doctor. Of course, back then, they don't know what you now. They didn't work for hands, and probably killed him by taking the ball out, actually. But Robinson would know none of this, because after firing what would become the fatal shot, he would turn home about half-mile south of where he had shot James. His oldest child, or daughter, was caring for the family baby. His wife and the other children working in a cabin, near the cabin. There's some clearing. Reload his rifle, catch one end, the string is trigger, and opened the other peg sticking out of the cabin. Placed the mole's gun up against his chest and pulled the trigger with his toe, basically. The bypassers started killing him instantly. He was buried on his own land, which was south of the Cloverdale Cemetery, probably an unmarked grave, of course. And I don't know really where Thomas James was buried. Because back then they buried people in the backyard, on the back 40, whatever. So that was the first murder followed by the first suicide. In an article in 1967, the Banner, we get a lot of articles from Hoosier State Chronicle, which is a wonderful online resource. I'd love to read these articles. Start reading one, and then you get some other information. You read another one, and before you know it, it's got dark, and your wife's wanting you to come for supper, and you need to put it away. It's fun to do these. Talks about the first store and so forth and so on. And come about how there's 3 dragons scored in original time. Just as close as we get to some of the original merchants and so forth in Cloverdale. And then this is from the 1870 Atlas biographical section. It talks about some of the people for Sawmill and section Country 12, section 6, section 12, 3, Blairsville. Moses Nelson had the first tavern in the township. And then Thomas Nelson put up a store and so forth to so on. Some of the other people, you can read about those in the 1879 Atlas if you have that book. If you're not, again, we have excellent reproductions of that book. And then another section set for stores kept men in 4 in Nelson's old building, followed by Harrison, Richard Brewer, John, and William Sandy. So you know the Sandy family, of course. And then the Stone Quarry, and then Martin Quarry, so it came Martin Marietta, I believe, 3/4 mile northeast of town. This is also in 1879, had the business directory of the town. You see a superintendent of schools, lives in Cloverdale, livery stable, Francis Sandy's livery stable, Dunnington, so forth and so on, including Dr. Dyer's, the physician, and then a second physician called Preston. And then a few others. We have Eccles, and then Don Macy, and then Mason Cone, or Con, I believe it's called. Then we have an interesting photo. So the dashed lines we talked about with the sexes word. We'll talk about the first stats. This is from 1864. The 1864 map of Putnam County is available online. Courtesy Library Conference is really neat. And then the section of Cloverdale Township, now known as West Cloverdale, there by way of Hamilton in 1823. And then the part known as East Cloverdale, entered by John Macy, also in 1823. So you can see some of those people here. Coys, and then we have Macy the McGinnis, and then Hart, some of those people, and where the school is located. Cloverdale acquired post office in 1836. William Hart was appointed postmaster. Originally Cloverdale, 2 words. And then it became known as Cloverdale, 1 word. Solomon Akers was appointed postmaster in 1855. So this is a part of a book I cut out called Postmasters 1832 to 1971. Handwritten journal of postmasters. It's online if you can find it. It's real cool. And before 1832, you wanted to find a postmaster, you have to go to National Archives. Tony and I went to National Archives researching postmasters before 1832 in Atlanta. I found some of those. So by 1839, Moses Nelson and his son Thomas had acquired sections of these parcels of East and West Cloverdale, respectively. About 1836, they began selling lots in 1843, and they're both buried in the Cloverdale Cemetery. So this is the plot map of not Cloverdale. There was never a Cloverdale platted. His father and son platted West Cloverdale and East Cloverdale, and that's what they were called when they were platted. So there is no Cloverdale platted. In fact, I asked Robbie once at the plot office when I started research about the plat of Cloverdale. Oh, so there is not one. There was never a plat of Cloverdale. So technically we have West Cloverdale and East Cloverdale. Very poor map. And you can see the division line is actually that section line that we looked at at the very beginning, about a block east of what's now 231, east of the stoplight, the downtown, between 231 in the school. So that's where it was plotted. And then the description in the bottom of that. So even though it's plotted separately, they were on the same map. And they were plotted the same day as West Cloverdale and East Cloverdale. In 1849, General Assembly passed legislation to incorporate the town of Cloverdale, which was incorporated shortly after that. This is from the 1864 map of Putnam County, courtesy of the Library of Congress. You can see a split that's between the north and the south part, because Cloverdale's so long, north and south. And you see in the north part, we see the academy. We'll talk about the academy, big part of it. And then South Cloverdale's a little bit more developed. And then we have a business directory. I'll zoom in on that. In 1864, now, the preceding 1879 we'll look at, we had blacksmiths, and then we had Dr. Dyer, Dr. Wise, physician, the surgeon, and so forth. And then Windfall McGinnis. You've heard of the McGinnis family and McGinnis Cemetery near Cloverdale. I know you're familiar with that. Talk about the seminary itself. So, back in the day, you really didn't have higher learning. You just, from the public schools, the attached schools, usually went to roughly 6th grade, 8th grade. But if you wanted to go past that, you had to enroll in one of the private seminaries. And we had several in this county. The Cloverdale, Greencastle had 2, the county and the city seminary. There was one in Russellville, and there's one in Baybridge. We'll talk about those as we talk about those communities. So the seminary was really the guiding force of Dr. Dyer, who married Rhoda McGinnis when he came to the Putnam County area, and then began to practice medicine in 1845. And he set up, basically instrumental in getting the seminary started, raised the funds, had a lot of people involved, got incorporated in 1850, and it was west of Columbus Street, and that block that we saw, no longer standing, of course. This is really, I found an article in the Research Future State Chronicles, published in the Greencastle Democrat, 1892, where it's reminiscing of an article in the Putnam County Sentinel dated 1851. So in the first graduating class of the seminary, talks about the commencement and listed the students. They each of them had a topic that they would speak on, and that's what they spoke on. And these, it's really neat because you could see who the first students were, graduates from the academy. And then that newspaper article went on to say speeches were original, the highest quality, and so forth. And then also that 1892 article, to follow up on the fate of the students, each and every one of them, if they were still living where they were, and if they were not still living. Then the school was discontinued in 1853 because the majority of stockholders did not want to be taxed to support the school. So you really didn't have taxation for schools legally until 1871 for all schools. So 1853 was early days. So you really could not financially support it. It'd be very expensive to send your children to the school. So they wanted higher education, learn some Latin, higher math, and so forth, more than they could get at the little red brick schoolhouse. Cloverdale's had a number of newspapers, and this is just some of them that I saw. I'm sure there were more than this. Said first newspaper, we believe, was published in 1877 called The Beat, which only lasted a year. Then in 1878, one called The Local Item, which survived for several years. And then the Kodak Graphic was first printed in 1878. In 1939, it was renamed the Greencastle, or the Putnam County Daily Telegraph, and its offices moved to Greencastle. And then the graphic in 1950 merged with a road-style publication called the Putnam County News and became the graphic. And after the fire destroyed the graphic buildings in 1969, they merged with the banner, or became the banner graphic. So some of the other newspapers include the Gazette, Courier, and the Herald. And then in 1976, a free weekly newspaper called Hoosier Topics began to be started. And they're still publishing, aren't they? You still get the Hoosier Topics, or are they not? They no longer publish. I used to get it when I lived somewhere else. I used to live in Heritage Lake, and we would get it. I don't know why we got it there. I didn't know if it was still going or not. How long has it been since it's been a few years since it's been gone? It's about the railroad. Snitka part of it was the railroad. Commonly called the Monon, has an interesting history in and of itself. It began in southern Indiana in 1847 as the New Albany and Salem Railroad, with James Brooks as president, and one of the investors, primary investors of that original railroad, was an industrialist from New Albany, originally from Salem, called Wharton C. DePaul. You probably heard that name. And then the New Albany and Southern acquired existing northern railroads up by Michigan City, intending to build north from the existing New Albany and Southern Railroad and south from New Albany to Michigan City, And the northern sections were completed from Michigan City and reached Banbury's by the end of 1853, and then to Greencastle in 1854, where the two railroads met. And the southern section came from Salem went to Bloomington Gosport. Last 10 miles of track were completed in southern Putnam County. You really need newspaper articles. Saw that the last spike, Connecticut Road, was driven at 4 p.m. that kind of day on June 24th, 1854, at Connection Bridge, which is a small structure southeast of Putnamville and a few miles northwest of Cloverdale. And that's exactly the location of where those two bridges, the North Line, South Line, met at that bridge. And then they didn't really have much of a ceremony, but they had a big grand ceremony in New Albany in July 4th, 1854, to officially commemorate the railroads going from the Ohio Railroad to Great Lakes. And there's a running plaque in New Albany, talks about the railroad, talks about how it was started and so forth, so on. And then on the left-hand side, it says the last rail was laid in southern Putnam County. And then on the right, the interesting thing, so the Monon had apparently a significant role in the Underground Railroad. So you wouldn't necessarily think about that, but it kind of makes sense. But did you go north from Louisville, and you got a blazed trail where the railroad is, probably not traveling during the day, probably at night, and maybe not at the rail line, but close to it. And then they have various stops along the way. We have several places in Putnam County we believe were stops on the Underground Railroad, but we can't document those because they didn't keep records. It's really hard to get something documented on the railroad. We have a number of places where we believe were stations on the railroad. And if you said you had one that you thought was and interesting.
There's one that's the house I've heard they renovated it, and there's space underneath it that's not really been opened up. It's straight north of the Octagon House or whatever, Cloverdale. It's the house right north of it. But you don't know. And then there's another one that was up there at Stardust Hills, and my mom lived in it, and it's all blocked off. So there's a cave back in there, and been destroyed probably. That's the problem.
As there were artifacts, I saw artifacts that came out of the cave that were Underground Railroad artifacts. The people that owned it at one time opened that back up, and the artifacts ended up over to California and being sold. I tried to buy them, in Cloverdale. But I saw the artifacts that came out of that cave myself, shackles, ledgers of the slaves that had came through that common.
Is it the one at Stardust?
The one of Charvez, the Franklin House.
Yeah. So they're the
Then I saw that myself. It's not, I mean, I laid eyes on them.
so the Senate House of Russellville was supposed to have been a stop to tip of the barn, and the barn of Bristol Standard. There was a log cabin not far from where I live, but by Russell have had a false wall. That there would have been no reason to have false wall other than to hide people. So here we got some running photos, some of them from the library, some of them here at the museum. This is Main Street, Cloverdale, 1908. Another Main Street looking south, 1910. Most of these are postcards, by the way. So it's kind of neat, see all the details of people and everything. And then another one, 1910, Main Street, Cloverdale. And then here's South Main Street, but no date on it, so we don't know when that was dated, but it's probably about that same time frame as those others. One of them, and I read it, said, Greenhouse, West Main Street, Cloverdale, not dated, we believe also 1910. And then the depot, running photo of the depot, not dated. So the town of Cloverdale is it's the depot, trying to restore it, keep it up, like Boss I heard. So I don't know if they're still successful with that or not, but it's still there. I don't know if it's been moved from its original location, but it's at the original location. It's still there. Then a neat thing that we had is the 1900 commencement Cloverdale schools and the teenage schools held at City Hall on June 30th of that year. It tells you who the trustees were, the township instructors, and they opened it up. And you see the program, and then through the students or the graduating students, pretty neat. So at the high school, there's 4 graduates, then the grammar department, and then the township schools, about a dozen people. Got a photo of, I think it came from the library's website. Hubert Clodfelder had this. The Eccles Bridge was no longer standing, west of Cloverdale. So that did the true purpose, because I was hoping you guys could share some with us that you know. So what do you guys have to say about Cloverdale that I've not covered? And so anything? Yeah.
J.L. McKee at a jeweler shop. And this bracelet bought in 1903. And it was a gift from my grandfather to my grandmother.
Very nice. So, and you knew. You did a little bit, of course. That's for sure there. Yeah. So anybody else? But Cloverdale people here, I think pictures.
They had a movie theater in downtown Cloverdale. And my grandparents kind of were the people taking tickets and selling tickets. And a funny little story. My father loved all kinds of animals. So he found this snake that seemed to be frozen. So he put it in his jacket, and he knew he better get to the theater because Mom and Dad would be looking for it. The snake started squirming as it got long, and he let it go. And my grandmother said she never spanked my father, but she wanted to that day because everybody just cleared out. So there's the...
Anybody else? So I think we're coming out. We already kept this short on purpose, but we also have recorded some of the presentations. I have a little bit longer YouTube to type in Putnam County Museum. Then Cloverdale, Putnam County Museum, Rochdale. You talk about this a little bit longer version of this there. So thank the camera. Rachel, we decided, yeah, we're ready next.
No, he has a delay.
The-
Is it time to start circling back to the pre-COVID talks, do you think?
So we're gonna start over some of the ones we've done earlier years ago. We started the
It's been 6 years.
just 10 years ago.
Video. Okay, I don't.
Next, I had a question about Cloverdale. So, and this is just for the group. I would really like to learn more about when the schools consolidated in the latter the 20th century. If anyone has stories, those details about what went down, I've lived here for less than 2 years, and I don't have a lot of interactions with the schools at this point. But it really stands out to me. There's South Putnam, North Putnam, Greencastle, and then Cloverdale. So I would just really love to learn more about that personally, and then also so that we could share those stories easier. Sure. So my name is Rachel. Please, if anyone has information, please reach out to you.
I will say to anybody that might be interested, that you may still have it. Some of you people may know Tom Jones.
Yes.
Okay, Tom Jones has the first doctor that was in Cloverdale's cabinet that he kept these surgical tools in, and he was trying to figure out what to do with it. He'd like to see, the last time I talked to Tom about it was about a year ago, he'd like to see it stay in Cloverdale. He no longer lives in Cloverdale. So,
There was the Doc Hearst that was in Cloverdale. And I have the clock. So, anyway, big deal.
I guess telegraph with town built there.
And then Bill Henson, who is down in Cloverdale, you need to interview him. He's a great historian. He's like 90. The funny thing about it, his mother taught my mother, like in the 3rd grade, in 1924, 25, whatever it is, and she taught me in the 3rd grade at Bell Union, her last year's teaching.
So next month we'll figure something out. If anybody have requests for copy, we're not coming.
I got one more that I can't put it all together because I don't know, but somebody else might. My dad always talked about Uncle Dan Moffett, who was the president of the bank of Cloverdale. And when he died, he was so big, it was on the 2nd story of the house, and they had to take the window out and get some kind of a pulley thing to get him out because he died on the 2nd floor. So, I mean, that's another one of those stories you're made a big spectacle of everything back then.
So we'll figure something out for next day. There's also an old road that started in Cloverdale, south side of Cloverdale, and it goes down meanders and goes to Cataract Lake. It's called Moccasin Pass. It's the first Indian trail that went through there. And it goes through my property, but I've known about the trail all my life. But it went from there to Cataract Lake to the bogs. And it was started, it was cemented in the south side of Cloverdale.
With the using that buffalo trade shoe back, or
It was called Moccasin Pass.
they were probably chased the buffalo.
I don't know, but I walked it from Cloverdale to Cataract Lake, and it is up at the Narrows, and there Cataract Lake. On my farm west of Cloverdale was the first Indian trading post in the whole area. In my front yard, actually, and then they moved it right up to the main road from there. So that's about a couple mile out town.
When you're, and I'm asking because you say the first path and the first trading post, but presumably there were then, several generations.
The farm that I'm on was in one family from kind of was homesteaded.
Yeah.
In the Barrope family. Right. And I got a lot of history from that family. They were in almost 100, there's 3 sisters, Williamses. And I got a lot of history about the farm from them. And then I tore down the the old buildings. When I didn't realize what I was tearing down, but I told Dad to pull down the buildings when I bought the farm. Yes. Yeah. No, what were they located? And artifacts of what, when I done the excavation, I found artifacts that would probably justify the hearsay on buildings. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I found out in artifacts, arrowheads, and axes, stuff like that.
Amazing. If you ever want to write up a story for the arch, you should.
Well, there's a lot of things about, well, I know a lot about West Cloverdale, but Indian thing, can't, because they need can't to Putnamville.
I guess, yeah. An arrow place for camphouse.
Well, this was made that cute. There's a Civil War gate there, same campsite.
There used to be an orphanage south of Cloverdale, and it was on the property I used to own, and it was right along the Monon Railroad, and they would drop children off at that orphanage. And it's in the abstract indeed, but I no longer have that either. I gave it away when I so fun. But a lot of history about the orphanage, a lot of, children that maybe their parents couldn't afford to take care of them anymore. I think some was there because of the wars and so, I thought maybe somebody would like to know that there was a rather large orphanage there. And it's kind of southeast Cloverdale off of 1200 South right at the railroad track was where it was located. Go make some books out. Oh, Fred's over there. On your book.
I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about the tiny towns and Xanich villages. I've watched Larry collect all his information, and one of the reasons I think Cloverdale ended up being a later presentation is because he is from northern Putnam County, and he would see people he knew from Cloverdale, and we would see him at the fair, and we'd want to get together. Well, then the pandemic hit, and so then he couldn't share stories anymore, so that's why there's all the videos on YouTube. But one of the reasons he doesn't know as much about Cloverdale as he does the other is because we're so far away, and so it's really great to have people that are interested in it to share it with Rachel. But that's kind of why Cloverdale didn't get shorted. It's just he didn't ever feel like he was getting to the point where he could share as much. But there's Putnam County history book that you could go and get here at that.
I remember those after that's the above it at Cloverdale, and that of all the communities,
You mentioned the spring, that and your story about the murder and everything. On the south side of Cloverdale, it was, remember the woods they call Little Egypt? In the middle of that woods,
you own it. Yeah, he owns it now. There was cattle in there. That's where Jack Swope lived for a while, wasn't it? Well, it's all south. Was that one further south? But there was a cabin in that woods, and there was a big spring.
I don't know what you guys did with the water from that spring, but there was a big spring in that woods.
So we what it is, essentially, or is it get some new information that we didn't know from the people that were.
The other thing I found out about, there was a town or a village below the dam. It's on the side. If you go over there, I went with somebody with a metal detector and we found stuff. But anyway, that's just below the dam.
Below the dam.
Okay, it is south, but it's right there. That was a village. I don't know what the name of it was, but it's more information. If somebody got any information about it.
I know we're talking a few years back about Oakland. Judge Eccles and that area, the cemetery near where Oakland was. And Fred Mann was there. Could that be her? Are you president? Are you Fred?
Fred.
You're Fred. Well, I got you guys confused. Good to. Yes, or
My son Joe,
okay.
yeah, he owns all the area.
So you guys now near who are that? Echo Cemetery. Yeah, I tell you, you're on that land. So Tony and I are both understanding them people, and probably this cemetery is restored at West care. And then we fix it.
There's a Civil War veteran buried in that Eckers. That's that church.
Really grown up in trees through that.
That is not. Yeah. I think trustees actually maintained that the last couple of years, so it looks better now than it did.
So they're trying to keep it mowed a little bit.
Yeah.
The trees are still there, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. I apologize. I think we're just saying that. So that was just sort of go. Which almost said, all right, come, we wanted to get this done, and you guys share this.
Yeah.
That you own the property.
Yeah.
But we wanted to do something with it.
You walk me done.
Anything else? Got your share.
Talking about the cemetery, do you know the cemetery that is west of Cloverdale? That you can't get there per gear. It's got trees on this side, and there's a house that was built across this.
Around the bit home from, yeah, right. Now that was actually, Mount Hebron Church started at that cemetery, and in 1839 or 40, they moved it with horses up the road to where it's at right now. But the foundation for the church is still at that cemetery, and a lot of the earlier settlers, was the Hutlets, yeah, so was was kind of where that all started. Yeah, I know the cemetery well.
So my family is there.
What's our family's last name?
Woodall.
Woodall's, yeah.
And I would just like to see
It's footpath.
somehow of getting in there.
The last time I was there, it was footpath only. I don't know who owns the property now around it, but
You're talking right here. You'd see about this area right here. So there's a Salem cemetery.
that's it. Yeah, that's Salem Cemetery right there in Tabor. Yeah, in this church, Mount Hebron Church, it's up here. Used to be here, and they moved it up the road there.
This one.
That whole, there's a lot of Indian history in that whole area.
It's hard to get to.
Yeah, footpath.
I get to that. As you come in the back way, you're trespassing on this dead person. If you come in from the north, you're trespassing on this one. If you come in from the north west, then you have to go through briars and brambles and a little creek that runs through there. And I visit the cemeteries, but that one is just really it.
Then you pull in the driveway and all kinds of their trespassing signs.
Oh, absolutely. And they'll come out and ask you to leave.
Yeah.
So I had a. There been
I'm working off memory, but I think the cemetery comes all the way to the road on the south.
It does.
So there was a footpath there for years that from the road that you could go up there, and that's actually was a little bit of a road there before they reworked the county road. There was a little road that you could have gotten a truck up in there. They came off the county road on the south side of that.
That I know nothing about that, but I do know how I'm at that halfway, but it is so overgrown that we elderly people we just don't have any way to get there.
And there's several graves up there.
Oh, yes.
And you're right, it's not many cages.
So,
That's the kind of sector where we try to restore some cemetery. One of the projects we did last year with Brick Chapel, it's there before without direction. So it's much better is in the news. And thank Cody for that. She's the one that the cleaning of the cells. Right, But some of the others either resetting or deleting stuff. That's the only one we would like to get done. It's just kind of hard to get it worked out with the property owners. And I think the property owner, according to the county deed records, wasn't their hope. They had to pursue somebody else's property.
Calling that the undergrowth has just taken over, and I can't get up.
There was a usable road off of that road many, many, many years ago, but when the county went through there and redone that road and ditched it, the blacktopped it and all that years ago, I grew up there in that area, within a mile there. They changed the whole, but people, of course, stopped being buried back there. You didn't, nobody got buried. The last people buried there, I think, was some of the Joneses. And the Joneses owned the property at the east, or the east of the east.
The Alto Cemetery is on 500 South. I think Fred owns that property now, and it's got Civil War soldiers buried there.
Which I own the same cemetery, different. Oh, yes. Oh, the cemetery you're talking.
It's a different one. It's you go off 1200 and you turn on 500 East, and it's up over the hill. And what I found kind of very interesting, we had beef cattle, and they would go on the outskirts of the cemetery, that they would not go inside. I just thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, well, there's this cemetery up here, the Mount Zion Cemetery. I don't even think it's on this mount even. But the song quarries started to get around it, and they were worried about storing it. So we heard with this Boy Scout troop came and stood, in the area for a number of days. They've come and keep putting it away so it's built up a hillside all the way around it. I think there was a church at one time. It's called Mount Zion. It's not listed here. I'm not sure where the exactly. There's a Chamberlain Cemetery. Chamberlain Hill is down the sort of Silver Road, almost the end of it. Apache, they need more too.
Something, if you're dealing with cemetery, you need to know that there's a state law that very few people really realize. I'm in the timber business and recognized it most of my career. You're not, according to state law, supposed to cut a tree within 100 feet of a tombstone.
Or you're not supposed to certain.
It doesn't mean it's a registered cemetery or not. And the cemetery indicates.
If you need to do something, you have to file a development plans with DNR. We have the responsibility, and we do that. If you're going to crow and try to dig up maybe a tombstone to even reset it, you have to file a development plan. Because there's been too many instances of cemeteries being destroyed, actually. It's just sad. A lot of some protect that.
There's also a cemetery over in the Town area. So are you familiar with what?
Right down Farm Michaels.
Yeah, on the Michael farm. There's
And then the Quinette Cemetery. They're out on I believe Joe Terry's place. We actually restored that one last fall. And we've been up in our list for a year. I got it down.
But it takes more than 1 year, because we restored it 6 years ago, because there was trees falling down and everything else. So, you go in and you do it and you think, oh, it looks great. And within 2 years, it's.
Yeah, you have to maintain it. We're trying to get program to maintain how to restore them, but they just go right back if you don't.
I'm a Quinette.
Are you Quinette?
I'm a Quinette.
So
I knew about the cemetery.
Yeah, so when we were there, the owners talked about this one whole row where they think there used to be tombstones near the fence.
Okay. George Washington's buried there. George Washington Quinette and his son George Washington Quinette and his son George Washington.
I think one of them was missing when we were there. Somebody else, the people came to storage, and she was like, "There's supposed to be more stones here," and yeah.
But all the trees are gone.
Well, there was trees laying all over. That's what we took off.
Yeah.
Haha.
If they're all new. And somebody had been recirculating stones for 2 or 4, so we reset the stone now at 2 quarter line. And then try to get the clay bars so they're gonna look pretty nice.
And you can prove it, Lori.
I'm recognizing the names because, like, the commission, we have a new program that we put all 203 cemeteries on it, and it's not ready for the public to see everything yet. But each cemetery, I'm up to 50 cemeteries where I go and put them. Like, it's on a big map with all 203 that you'll be able to click into. But underneath, I got 50 maps of, like, that Horn, Michael. That was the last one I think I did today. Is that what it's called, Horn, Michael?
That's what some people call it.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was the last map that I made today. So it's the second lieutenant that's for each one. So it's going to take me a while to get the other 153 put in. And then once they're in, and we'll put, which we'll take volunteers to help us with this. We'll put the information from Larry's Putnam County Cemetery website, move it over. It's got to be copied over. And then you have to go to the cemeteries and mark little headstones for everybody. That would be where, once the cemetery's done, you could stand at a stone and look at this person and it'll be connected.
So this is for difference like now. So we've got all the cemeteries that carry marked, and then you can go to individual cemeteries when they get well.
See, this looks like the right shoulder on the one side. Okay, I can put it up.
I can see these little markers here at the Maysville Cemetery. We can mark the name those sites.
Oh, okay.
Even though I should have had that written. But anyway, little markers here, we just sort of put them in, and you can go to one of them, click onto it, and you get the story of the person. I bet you know where the chips are.
Metanoble, there's a cemetery you don't know. It's south and west of 243 and 70. And there was Union cavalry soldiers buried in that cemetery. Yeah, I could show you where it was at on a map. It may be gone as it wasn't registered. So, and the Stone Prairie, he got career and that to work.
There's another cemetery somewhere in that general area. Somebody was talking to me and they said, "Oh, my mom took those stones. We made them in a circle around a fire pit." And I'm going like, "Oh, and it was? Can you give me more information?" And that was as far as you.
Starts. You think you need check this if you didn't?
Who cares?
Six.
Sure. I can show you a man what's that.
What? Washington taps better.
Somebody because of Washington, it may still be Section 33, but probably Washington.
It's, you know where Deer Creek? If you was on 243 right north of 70, you go west to it. Go down the first road, crosses over Deer Creek. You go back up Deer Creek about not a half mile, creates a mile on the hillside of Deer Creek on the right hand, on the south side of Deer Creek is where that's at.
That's about where this location is that I'm talking about. Will be right. Yeah, I have never been there, but that's the generally literally
For a while, and Eric Heyman bought it, group shop. When I saw him, Eric bought that on the other side. There's a stroke break in the other side, so I don't know if he's crazy still there because of water industry. I was in the same chat.
Oh, bad today. I've been coming out.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. So nice to see everyone come out on a full night to learn more about the history of Cloverdale. So please keep your eyes out for announcements for next month's topic. This is part of a recurring series that we're doing. And most of the topics that Larry speaks about here are covered in his recent book on Putnam County history, which is available now I think it's available at all libraries in the county. We also sell it at a gift shop. So if you are interested in learning more, that's available. And we also have the 1879 atlases, and those incredibly detailed maps for the full county. There's a lot of really, really interesting stuff on here. So, yeah. Thank you all for coming. Good night.